On my daughter's 15th birthday, my sister Vivian walked into our home carrying expensive gifts wrapped in designer paper. She handed them out one by one to her own children, right in front of Sophie, while my daughter stood there smiling that brave, breaking smile kids wear when they're trying not to cry. When I asked if she'd brought something for the birthday girl, Vivian looked at me like I'd asked her to donate a kidney. She said she didn't have an obligation to celebrate with all the children in the family. Sophie ran upstairs. I followed and found her sobbing into her pillow, asking why her aunt hated her. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I just held my daughter and made a decision. A week later, Sophie found something on an old computer we'd inherited from my grandmother. Files, emails, scanned documents. Secrets that revealed the truth about Vivian's perfect life. When I confronted my sister with the evidence, she went pale, her hands shaking as she begged me not to tell anyone. But the truth has a way of breaking free, no matter how tightly you try to hold it down. I grew up in Vivian's shadow. That's not self-pity, just fact. She was born first, which in our family meant she got first dibs on everything. Attention, resources, pride. My parents looked at her the way art collectors look at masterpieces. I was more like the frame, necessary but forgettable. Vivian had piano lessons every Tuesday and Thursday. I had hand-me-down shoes and the promise that someday it would be my turn. That someday never came. She was beautiful in that effortless way some people are, the kind of beauty that makes strangers smile at you in grocery stores and teachers remember your name. I was fine, pleasant, invisible. By the time we had high school, the pattern was set. Vivian starred in school plays. I worked concessions, handing out popcorn and wiping counters. She dated the quarterback. I dated his friend who played clarinet in the band. She got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a cake and a card that said, "We'll see next year." Next year came and went. No car. Our parents weren't wealthy, but they made choices. Choices that always seemed to favor Vivian. When college came, they took out loans for her tuition at a private university. When I graduated high school, they handed me a brochure for community college and said I'd understand when I was older. I understood just fine. Vivian met Richard during her junior year. He came from old money, the kind that doesn't brag because it doesn't need to. His family owned properties across 3 states, had a name that opened doors without knocking. When they got engaged, my parents cried happy tears. Vivian had made it. She'd won. The wedding was spectacular. Ice sculptures, a live band, flowers imported from somewhere I couldn't pronounce. I was a bridesmaid in a dress I couldn't afford, smiling in photos where I'm slightly out of focus. Vivian and Richard bought a house that could have fit 3 of mine inside it. White columns, a circular driveway, rooms they didn't even use. She posted photos constantly, perfect angles of perfect moments in a perfect life. Meanwhile, I met Jake at a hardware store. He was buying paint for his parents' garage. I was buying a plunger because my sink was clogged. Romantic, right? But Jake was kind, steady. He didn't promise me the world, just a life we'd build together. We got married at City Hall with 2 friends as witnesses. My parents said they were happy for me, but their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. They asked when we'd buy a house. I wanted to say, when you stop comparing me to Vivian, but I just nodded and changed the subject. When Sophie was born, I thought everything would shift. A baby, my baby, their granddaughter. Surely she'd be loved, celebrated, seen. And she was, for about a month. Then Vivian announced her first pregnancy. Suddenly, every family gathering became a countdown to Vivian's baby shower, Vivian's gender reveal, Vivian's nursery renovation. Sophie's milestones got footnotes. When Vivian's son was born, my parents drove 6 hours to stay with her for 2 weeks. When Sophie took her first steps, I called to tell them. My mom said, "That's wonderful, sweetie. then asked if I'd seen the photos Vivian posted of the baby's designer nursery. Over the years, Vivian had 2 more children. All of them were enrolled in elite preschools before they could walk. They wore clothes with labels I had to Google. They vacationed in places I'd only seen in magazines. Sophie had library books and a secondhand bike, but she was happy. She didn't know any different. She thought all families were like this. Some people just got more, and that was normal. The comparisons never stopped. At Thanksgiving, my dad would ask how Jake's job was going, then immediately turn to Richard and discuss investment portfolios. At Christmas, Vivian's kids opened mountains of gifts, while Sophie got 3 or 4 modest ones. My parents always had an explanation. Vivian's kids are older. They have different interests. Don't make this about fairness. But it was about fairness, or the lack thereof. And Sophie, sweet, observant Sophie, started noticing. She was about 12 when she asked me, "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa visit us as much?" I told her they were busy. She asked why Aunt Vivian's kids got to go to Disneyland twice a year, and we'd never been once. I told her money was tight. She nodded, but I saw the hurt in her eyes, that quiet understanding that she was somehow less, that she didn't measure up. And I hated it. I hated that my daughter was learning the same lesson I'd learned, that in our family, love was conditional, and the conditions were impossible for us to meet. By the time Sophie's 15th birthday came around, I'd stopped expecting much from my family. But Sophie still hoped. She spent weeks planning her party, making decorations by hand, writing out invitations on cardstock she'd bought with her allowance. She wanted it to be special, not expensive, just special. We invited close friends, a few neighbors, and of course, family. My parents RSVP'd yes. Vivian said she'd try to make it, which in her language meant she'd show up late and leave early. The day of the party, Sophie wore a dress we'd found on sale, pale blue with small white flowers. She'd curled her hair herself, practiced her smile in the mirror. She wanted to look grown up, confident. She wanted to feel important, even if just for one day. The party started at 2. By 2:30, most of the guests had arrived. Cake, snacks, music playing from a speaker Jake had borrowed from a coworker. Sophie laughed with her friends, played games, and acted like everything was perfect. My parents showed up around 3, armed with apologies about traffic. They handed Sophie a card with a check inside, $50. She hugged them and thanked them. They smiled, patted her head, and immediately asked where Vivian was. Of course. Vivian arrived at 4, an hour late, trailing her husband and 3 kids like a royal procession. She wore a designer outfit, sunglasses perched on her head, even though we were indoors, carrying gift bags that clearly cost more than our monthly grocery budget. But none of them were for Sophie. She set the bags on the couch and started pulling out items, narrating each one like a game show host. For my oldest, a smartwatch. For my daughter, noise-canceling headphones. For my youngest, a tablet. Her kids squealed, ripped into packaging, didn't even say thank you. Sophie stood a few feet away, a smile frozen on her face, hands clasped in front of her like she was trying to hold herself together. I walked over, keeping my voice low. "Vivian, did you bring anything for Sophie?" She looked at me like I'd just asked her to solve a calculus problem. Why would I? I blinked. It's her birthday. So? I don't have an obligation to celebrate with all the children in the family. She said it loud enough that people nearby stopped talking. Sophie's face crumpled. She turned and ran upstairs. I followed, my chest tight, anger bubbling under my skin. I found her face down on her bed, shoulders shaking. I sat beside her, put my hand on her back. She turned, eyes red and swollen. Why does Aunt Vivian hate me? My throat closed. She doesn't hate you, sweetheart. Then why does she treat me like I'm invisible? I didn't have an answer, not one that would make it worse, so I just held her while she cried, while downstairs, my sister laughed and posted photos of her kids with their new gifts, tagging them blessed and grateful. I stayed with Sophie until she fell asleep, exhausted from crying. Then I went downstairs. The party had deflated. Guests were leaving, my parents were cleaning up, Vivian was reapplying lipstick in the hallway mirror. I walked past her without a word, didn't trust myself to speak, but something inside me had shifted, something cold and sharp and patient. I would remember this, and when the moment came, I'd act. The week after Sophie's birthday, the house felt heavier. She went back to school, back to her routine, but something had dimmed in her. She stopped mentioning family gatherings, stopped asking when we'd see her cousins again. I tried to talk to her, but she just shrugged and said she was fine. That word, fine, the saddest lie kids learn to tell.
Jake noticed too. He suggested we take her somewhere, just the three of us. Maybe a weekend trip to the coast, something to remind her she was loved. I agreed. But before we could plan anything, Sophie came to me with a question. Mom, can I have Grandma's old computer? My grandmother had passed away 6 months earlier. We'd inherited a few pieces of furniture, some photo albums, and her old desktop computer. It was ancient, slow, the kind of machine that wheezed when you turned it on. Why do you want it? Sophie shrugged. I need something for school projects. My laptop's too slow. I figured maybe Grandma's computer still works. Sure, I said. It's in the attic. We can bring it down. That Saturday, Jake hauled the bulky monitor and tower downstairs. Sophie set it up in her room, plugged it in, pressed the power button. It groaned to life, the screen flickering blue before loading an old operating system. She clicked around, opening folders, exploring. An hour later, she called me. Mom, come look at this. I went to her room. She was sitting at the desk, eyes wide, pointing at the screen. There are a ton of files here. Emails, documents, scans. I think Grandma saved everything. I leaned over her shoulder. The desktop was cluttered with folders, labeled with names and dates. One folder caught my eye. Vivian. Financial. I clicked it. Inside were subfolders organized by year. I opened the most recent one. Emails. Dozens of them between my grandmother and Vivian, spanning years. I started reading. The first email was from 5 years ago. Vivian wrote to our grandmother asking for help with an emergency. A medical bill, she claimed, $20,000. Grandma replied, asking for details. Vivian sent a vague response, something about Richard's health scare, how insurance wasn't covering it. Grandma wired the money. The next email came 3 months later, another emergency, this time an investment opportunity that required immediate cash, $15,000. Grandma hesitated and asked more questions. Vivian got defensive, accused her of not trusting her, and said she'd pay it back with interest. Grandma sent the money. I kept reading, email after email, request after request. Car repairs, legal fees, business investments, renovations. Every few months, Vivian needed something, and every time, Grandma came through. But the tone of the emails began to change. Around 2 years ago, Grandma started pushing back. Vivian, I need to know what's really going on. You've borrowed over $100,000 and haven't paid back a cent. Vivian's response was cold, calculated. If you stop helping me now, Richard will find out. Do you want me to lose everything? That line made my stomach turn. It wasn't a request. It was a threat. Grandma replied, "This has to stop. You're lying to your family." Vivian didn't respond to that email. The next one came 6 months later. Another request, this time for $30,000. Eviction notice, she claimed. Grandma said no. Vivian sent a follow-up, more desperate, more manipulative. Fine, I'll tell everyone you've been playing favorites. I'll tell them you're the reason my marriage is falling apart. Grandma caved. Send the money. The last email was dated a month before she died. Vivian asked for another $20,000. Grandma didn't respond. A week later, Vivian sent another message, this time accusatory. I can't believe you'd abandon me like this, after everything I've done for you. I sat back, nauseous. Sophie looked at me. What does this mean? I opened another folder, this one labeled Documents. Scanned PDFs filled the screen. Foreclosure notices, credit card statements with balances in the tens of thousands, letters from collection agencies, a lawsuit filed by a contractor Vivian and Richard had hired but never paid. Every document painted the same picture. Vivian and Richard were drowning in debt. The perfect house, the luxury cars, the designer clothes, all of it was a facade propped up by borrowed money and lies. Sophie scrolled through silently, reading. Then she looked at me. Is this why Aunt Vivian didn't get me anything for my birthday? I thought about it. About the expensive gifts she'd brought for her own kids, gifts she probably couldn't afford but bought anyway to maintain the illusion. Yeah, I said quietly. I think so. Sophie frowned. But if she doesn't have money, why does she act like she does? Good question. I didn't have a good answer. Pride, maybe? Fear? Or maybe she'd been pretending for so long she didn't know how to stop. I printed everything. Every email, every document, every piece of evidence. I put it all in a folder, thick and damning. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but I knew one thing. Vivian had humiliated my daughter. She'd built her perfect life on lies and manipulation, and she'd done it at the expense of the one person who'd always bailed her out, our grandmother. And now, I have proof.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching so far. If you're enjoying this story, please leave the word truth in the comments below. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because trust me, you won't believe where this goes. I didn't call Vivian right away. I needed to think. Confronting her with this information felt like holding a grenade. I could pull the pin and watch everything explode, or I could put it down and walk away. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to stay silent. Let Vivian keep her secrets. Let her marriage crumble on its own. But every time I thought about doing nothing, I saw Sophie's face. That crushed, confused look when she asked why her aunt hated her. And I knew I couldn't let it go. A few days later, I texted Vivian. Can we meet for coffee? Just the two of us? She responded immediately. Sure, when? Tomorrow afternoon? Works for me. See you at that place on Maple Street. She added a heart emoji, oblivious. The next day, I arrived early, chose a table in the corner away from the windows. I wanted privacy for what was coming. Vivian breezed in 15 minutes late, designer bag on her arm, sunglasses pushed up into her perfectly styled hair. She hugged me, air-kissed both cheeks, and sat down with a theatrical sigh. God, I needed this. Richard's been so stressed about work lately. How are you? Good. How's Sophie? Still upset about her birthday? She said it casually, like it was a minor inconvenience. A scraped knee, not a deep wound. I didn't answer. Instead, I slid the folder across the table. What's this? Vivian asked, frowning. Open it. She did, slowly, flipping through the first few pages. Her expression shifted. Confusion, then recognition, then panic. The color drained from her face. She looked up at me, eyes wide. Where did you get this? Grandma's computer. Sophie found it. Vivian's hands started shaking. She closed the folder, pushed it back toward me. This is private. This is my life. No, this is a lie. You've been lying to everyone for years. Her mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Then, quietly, you don't understand. Try me. She looked around, checking if anyone was listening, then leaned in. Richard and I got into some bad investments early on. Real estate deals that fell through, business ventures that didn't pan out. We were supposed to recover, but it just kept getting worse. So you borrowed from Grandma. She helped me. Because you manipulated her. I did what I had to do. Her voice rose, then dropped again. I had a reputation to maintain, an image. People expected us to be successful. So you faked it.
And when Grandma tried to cut you off, you threatened her." Vivian's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't look like regret. They looked like they were afraid. If Richard finds out, if my kids find out, if anyone finds out, I'll lose everything. "Maybe you should." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "How can you say that? How can you humiliate my daughter on her birthday and then act like you're the victim? Sophie is a child, Vivian. A child you've ignored and dismissed her entire life because she doesn't fit into your perfect Instagram aesthetic." I stood, picking up the folder. "You're going to tell Richard. You're going to tell your kids. You're going to stop pretending." Vivian grabbed my wrist. "Please, don't do this." "I'm not doing anything. You are. You're going to come clean, or I will." Her grip tightened. "You destroy my family? You've been destroying it for years. I'm just turning on the lights." I pulled my hand free and walked out. Behind me, I heard Vivian sob, a broken, desperate sound. But I didn't turn around. For the first time in my life, I didn't clean up her mess. 2 days later, Vivian called. Her voice was small, hollow. I told Richard. There was a long pause. "He's devastated. We've been fighting nonstop. The kids don't understand." I didn't say anything. "We're selling the house," she continued. "Downsizing. Richard wants to start over, clean slate. He's furious, but he's not leaving." I exhaled slowly. "That's good." "Is it? I don't know what I'm doing anymore." For the first time, Vivian sounded real. No performance, no filter, just raw honesty. I don't know how to be anything other than what people expect. Then maybe it's time to figure it out. Another pause. "I'm sorry for Sophie. For everything. I should have been better." "Yeah, you should have." Can I apologize to her in person?" I thought about it. Sophie deserved an apology, but I wasn't going to force it. "I'll ask her. If she says yes, I'll let you know." "Thank you," Vivian whispered. I hung up. That evening, I talked to Sophie. I told her everything. About the emails, the debt, the lies. About Vivian's apology. She listened quietly, processing. Does she mean it? I think so. Do you want to hear it? Sophie thought for a long moment. Then she nodded. Yeah, I think I do. A week later, Vivian came to our house. She looked different. No designer clothes, no makeup armor, just jeans and a plain sweater, hair pulled back, eyes red from crying. Sophie sat on the couch, stiff, guarded. Vivian sat across from her, hands folded in her lap. "I'm sorry. For your birthday. For all the times I made you feel invisible. You deserved better, and I failed you." Sophie stared at her, unblinking. "Why did you do it?" Vivian's voice broke. "Because I was so focused on looking successful that I forgot how to actually be a good person. I was jealous of your mom, of how real her life is, how she doesn't need to pretend. And I took that out on you, and that was wrong." Sophie nodded slowly. "Okay." Vivian looked surprised. "Okay. I forgive you," Sophie said, "but that doesn't mean I forget." Vivian smiled sadly. "That's fair." She stood, hesitated, then left. When the door closed, Sophie turned to me. "Do you think Aunt Vivian will really change?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But at least now she has the chance." Over the next few months, Vivian's life transformed. They sold the mansion, moved into a modest 3-bedroom house in a normal neighborhood. Richard took on extra work to pay down debt. Vivian got a part-time job, her first in over a decade. And the kids adjusted. Some better than others, but they were learning the same lessons Sophie had already mastered. Things don't define you.
At Thanksgiving, Vivian showed up with a homemade pie instead of catered desserts. She complimented Sophie's outfit, asked about school, and actually listened to the answers. My parents noticed the change too. They asked fewer questions about money, stopped comparing. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And Sophie? She grew stronger, more confident. She learned that speaking up, that standing your ground doesn't make you mean. It makes you brave. One evening, she asked me, "Do you think Aunt Vivian is happier now?" I looked at her. "What do you think?" She considered it. "Yeah, I think she is. And maybe that's the best ending we could hope for. Not revenge, not destruction, just truth. Painful, messy, liberating truth." So, what do you think? Did I do the right thing by exposing Vivian's secrets, or should I have stayed quiet and let her figure it out on her own? How would you have handled it? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let me know. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. There are so many more stories to share, and I promise the next one is just as powerful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.